Serious, detectives, police officers of Reddit, what case did you not care to find the answer? Why? I had been alerted to a well-known local philanthropist, turned up dead. These were the days where physician-assisted euthanasia was illegal in most of the developed world. This man, I had known him quite well, and he had been suffering from a very serious terminal illness that was going to kill him before his 40th birthday, shattering his family, especially his 2 young children. He was always donating to local charities. He gave a struggling single mother $25,000 at Christmas one year so she could pay off her debts, repair her car, buy food and presents for her children. An autopsy had determined that he had been murdered. Intentional overdose of morphine. The Health Authority and Department of Justice wanted us to investigate and bring the person who essentially murders him to justice. We chalked it up that there was no way we could ever determine who it was that killed him. Years later, his wife sent our department a letter saying she gave her husband the lethal dose to put him out of his misery. I wish I had never known. Sadly, in so many cases, the shooting victim won't tell you at what location he was shot, let alone the circumstances surrounding the shooting. The first part of the investigation often involves disproving the victim's account. Guy says he was shot on 5th Street and walked to the hospital, but you have reports of sounds of gunshots on 15th Street and have video of him being dropped off in an Impala. Many times it's a case of retribution or neighborhood beefs, where an accurate narrative by the victim would require the backstory that he shot the suspect's friend the week before. It's disheartening when the main initial thrust of the shooting investigation is to figure out where it happened and why, and then the victim goes AWOL and provided a bad address and phone number, so then you need to hunt him down to convince him to tell you what really happened. This all takes hours and hours away from investigating lesser crimes where the victims are honest and forthcoming. You should see how many people enter my wife's CR, bad area of Detroit, under the name John Doe to try to stay anonymous. The staff literally have to be knowledgeable about the different area gangs' colors to put them into different areas of the hospital. There have been gang shootings in the hospital and somebody even brought in a couple live grenades once. A lady wanted us to come out and investigate because she believes while she was out, 2 people broke into her home and crap in her toilet. Just one of them though, the other was acting as a lookout. Didn't really delve into that one. Child pee is the worst in general. It's one of those things where you want the bad guy to go away, but you really don't care to find the evidence. If you mean in a serious manner of I just don't care if this gets solved, that thought doesn't happen much at all to me. I mean, that is why I got into the profession after all. To solve stuff and generally make people feel secure in their lives. Now, when people want to really report silly things as crimes, such as your house getting toilet papered, then yes, I don't care. Now, if you mean cases which definitely need to be solved and yet you don't want to know the real truth in the back of your mind just because you feel you may be disturbed, well, there are plenty of those, I suppose. The one I was most closely involved with being a 30-ish-year-old man who murdered a 14-year-old girl whom he had slept with, statutory RP, so that she would not testify against him in their upcoming trial. Such things happen, I guess. But the knowledge of how the actual murder went down was somewhat disturbing. Also, I did the perp walk of actually handcuffing him and taking him down to the jail. At the time we were arresting him for a small outstanding warrant and didn't technically know he murdered her, but examining his demeanor, looking at a large suspicious bruise on his arm, making small talk with him so he felt comfortable and didn't stop talking to us, etc. That still strikes me as a bit surreal looking back. I've had other things which, in hindsight, I question if what I did was the best thing based on the results. For instance, searching for a suicidal man, which ultimately led to him being in a standoff with a SWAT team, pulling a gun on them, and being killed. Maybe if we had just dropped it since he was no longer in our city, he would have shaken it off and come home. Or maybe he would have gone inside the business he was sitting at and started shooting people to do a suicide by cop. I never know. Last week a woman called 911 to report that the wind was loud and making too much noise. She wanted us to find out why it was so loud and if we could turn down the volume of the wind, added to better suit the post. We are often, if not always, dispatched to rescue calls depending on the severity type, due to the fact that we are closer than FD. Responded to a 4-year-old who was unconscious and vomiting. Without getting into the details, it didn't take long after my arrival to realize it was a cover-up. My partner and I already knew where this incident was headed, but you keep your head down and try and do the job without getting emotional. Mother and father were both adamantly lying that the child had just eaten some junk food and had gone to sleep before he started vomiting. Without getting into the details, investigation revealed that the father was mad at the child for eating some junk food, so he grabbed the child by the ankles and swung him around the house into furniture all over the home, nearly killing him. It's one of those cases that you don't want to investigate, because you know ahead of time what the outcome is going to be, how bad it's going to get. Large city police officer here. Every day there are jobs we get that we don't really care about. Most people would be surprised if we said we found stolen cars and returned them to the owner without much investigation afterwards. Most retail thefts in the city are reported and receive no further investigation. If all the store has is a short video of a dude wearing a hoodie walking out a store with $40 worth of merchandise, there's not going to be much investigating. A retail theft will never be a big city priority. Vandalism. Unless there is a video of it, we personally witness it, or we get a confession we can't arrest. We just take the report and refer them elsewhere. The only reason my stepdad's car was found 12 years after it was stolen was because someone had died in the backseat and the car was still registered in his name. Had a guy report he had been kidnapped and drugged against his will. He had managed to escape and had run across town to evade his captors. I was able to rendezvous with him and bring him back to the station. He told me this grand story about being taken across the county and by people he thought were his family, no less. When I asked him their names and where he had been held, he got all sheepish and said he didn't want to make enemies and just wanted to go home. I started driving him towards his home and dropped him off at a gas station just outside my jurisdiction. Sorry, neighboring detachment. He's your problem now. Not verified as Leo, but I'm sharing. Had an 18-month-old murdered by his mom's boyfriend. Don't know if it was intentional or accidental. Mom finds the kid after she gets off work. He's staged in his crib all tucked in but had been dead for several hours. Suspect had cut his wrists, written an apology in his blood on the bathroom wall, "I'm sorry, Tammy." The suspect had laid down in bed to wait to bleed out both wrists. We could tell because of the blood pooling on the bed. It took too long, so the suspect got up and left the house. I didn't care to find him to save him from his suicide attempt. I guess the crime was solved. We knew who had done it. I would have had to try to save the guy so he could go to court, but his death was easier and seemed more just. It's part of the job though, so we were going to look. Dongs put out a bolo on his car. We got a hit immediately. The suspect had driven into a neighboring county out in the county. He drove into a concrete barrier. They estimated he was going about 80 miles per hour. He wasn't belted in and was ejected through the windshield. The vehicle rolled and landed on him. The coroner couldn't tell which impact killed him. This was some years ago. The guys on the case all got Grand Cordon awards. I wear the ribbon on my Class A's. We didn't do anything though, really. It's just a reminder of how fricked up it gets. I still remember the kid's full name, his mother's name. I remember my sergeant saying, "The victim hasn't been down long, he's got a full belly," while I hooked up an ED and my partner did CPR. I remember thinking he's not full, his stomach is distended, he's been down too long, while we tried to save a dead child. That is the time I didn't want to find a suspect. Ex-cop, NSW, Australia. 7 years. I really never wanted to find the answer to two particular murders in my area. Two known sexual offenders were killed in the space of 8 weeks. One was a rock spider, pedophile. The other used to drug women. The two issues were unrelated. Only one of the alleged offenders was caught. Also a scumbag 1%. He was released after a week due to lack of evidence. I know it's bad to wish death on people, but these two blokes were just rancid. As a cop, it was my job to find the offenders, but as a human I had no interest in solving the issue at all. Luckily I was never in charge of the investigations. I was a corrections officer and we worked with the police on an almost daily basis. We'd get to chatting and I found, in my experience, cops hated car chases, they hated domestic disputes, but most of all, they hated suicides. I don't think I know a cop who doesn't have a suicide story where they can actually tell the whole thing. Being a cop, and a prison CO, puts you into contact with some of the lowest forms of human life. People for whom you couldn't shed a tear. But it's the innocent people, the victims of car accidents, suicides and families of victims that really bother us. As a CO, I had a little old lady who take a 4-hour bus ride to come to the prison to speak with her nephew. He was a real piece of crap, but she'd knit him sweaters, show him the sweaters and say, "I'll put this in the drawer for when you get out." She'd bring him food, which he could eat, and they'd talk and one of the COs would drive her back to the bus station. She broke my heart. It's always the people left behind or those suffering that really get to us. Anything involving a naked person, man or woman, it's never a fun time. Drugs, mental illness, poo flinging. Kids, anything involving kids. The case of why I got fired. A co-worker of mine had done something wrong. Nothing horrible, but a mere stupid mistake. I was there at the time, but I did not care. I told him to pay better attention next time and be done with it. But my superiors did not agree. They wanted him gone, so they ordered me to make the facts worse than they actually were. I was supposed to lie for them. I refused on the spot, and they told me that can't harm my career. I said I did not care, and that officers from the Royal Army should not behave in such a way. Before I knew it, they found someone else that lied about what he did, and about what I did. As we had no way of disproving what they told people we did, we both got fired without honors. It was done publicly, stripped of rank and honors. We both laughed and walked away, said this is not the kind of people we wanted to work for in the first place, and that they could go and frick themselves. We were both military police officers. I got a new job shortly after that and made almost twice the money I did there. Best decision of my life, and I have no regrets for not putting in a false statement. So I decided not to press charges, because we had no way of proving we did not do the things they claimed we did. H with a nasty attitude screamed at me for 15 minutes about how a check one of her less scrupulous clients had given her had bounced. Considering she didn't know who he was or where we could find him, and we weren't about to set up 24/7 surveillance to identify her John, we told her in no certain terms, to next time, take cash. I hate SIDS. I have had to deal with a few of those in my time as an MP. Car chases are awesome, the first time. After that you realize how freaking stupid they are. Also, one time I had to pick up a soldier who had shot his team leader and a friend in Iraq, Afghanistan. It was about a 10-minute drive from where I picked him up. I didn't say anything. I felt if I did I would get too emotional towards him on his actions, so I just kept my mouth shut. I heard once that most thieves will rely on the fact that the general populace believes that somebody else will intervene. From shoplifting to kidnapping, most people who witness a crime will hope somebody else saw it and did something. Personally, I rely on a thief's paranoia that I'm the dude who did. I saw it, I said something, and I will remember. So go ahead and make a scene, dude. I might lose my job, but you stand a chance at losing a little bit more. I'll have plenty of other jobs, but you will only have so many chances. That being said, I once helped these store detectives stop a guy who, once they got him to the back office, had stolen 2 quarts of motor oil and some baby formula. He broke down crying, saying he had a job interview the following Monday and his baby was hungry, and he had to make that interview come heck or high water. We gathered in a room without him and discussed it. Decided to let him go. I think my supervisor even bought the stuff for him. Or maybe I just want to remember it that way. Not one case or anything, but I would pay a lot of money to get rid of domestic violence if I could, and if I had a lot of money. Some of my worst memories of my time as an officer have to do with those calls. My uncle was a cop in Florida in the 90s. They were finding dead kids in by the interstate for maybe 5 years or so before my uncle retired. No suspects, kids abducted within 100 miles or so. At the peak, it'd be one body every 2 months. But usually they found to a year. Never been solved. After he retired, evidence photos in some of those cases got destroyed in a flood. For like 10 years after Uncle's retirement, his department would call him when a similar case came through so he'd reproduce the details for them. He stopped responding to those requests at some point, said he wants to live the rest of his life without seeing another dead child. You have been spotted by the money pigeon. Comment gimme gimme and he will bless you with good fortune. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.